Hi, this is Rabbi Jason Rosner. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm just making a little chocolate mousse for Shabbat tonight. Here I'm whipping the eggs, and while I'm doing that, I thought I'd talk to you about this week's Parsha. So the Parsha is the last Parsha of the book of Genesis. It's called Vayechi, and it serves as a bridge between the end of the Joseph story that really ends in the last Parsha in Vayigash and the beginning of the book of Exodus. So what happened at the end of the last Parsha in Vayigash is that Joseph used a famine as a way of gaining power for Pharaoh and his court over the freeholding farmers of Egypt. So what had happened was Joseph had forecast that there would be a famine, so he collected food. And then, over the 7 years of famine, he sold the food to the population. First they paid with money, and then they ran out of money. Then they had to pay with their livestock, and so on, until eventually they had nothing left to sell, but they needed the food so they wouldn't die. So they said to Joseph, "We will be slaves to Pharaoh." And when they said this, the Hebrew in the text is Avadim leParo. We will be. It's the same word that we use in the Passover story. Avadim hayinu hayinu. So, that makes a nice little beat to sing the song on. Anyway, so at the end of the story, the Egyptian freeholders had become serfs to Pharaoh and his court. The only people that were exempt were the Egyptian priests. Then Joseph dies in this week's Parsha. In next week's Parsha, the beginning of the book of Exodus, a new Pharaoh arises who did not know or really didn't understand Joseph, and he says to his advisors, essentially, let's wise up and be careful because there's this foreign entity in our land, and if there's a war, they can side against us and overthrow us. So I tell this story because what it illustrates is that the heroes and villains in a story can often depend on the perspective from which you're looking at it. From the perspective of someone reading who sides with Joseph, it looks like Joseph is the hero. He, through his forethought, has saved up food for the Egyptian people and saved them from dying, and it was only fair that he got something in return as a loyal servant of the Pharaoh at the time. Isn't that great? But from the perspective of an Egyptian freeholder, they might have been quite upset, and in fact, when the new government took over in Egypt, they were suspicious of the person who apparently had taken such great advantage of a natural catastrophe. And the result, I would say, in the Torah, following the principle of measure for measure, the idea that there's a sort of karmic retribution. The result of Joseph's family and Joseph enslaving the Egyptians was in turn the Egyptians enslaved the Israelites. And that's how we ended up with the story of the Exodus. So I think the lesson for this week is to be careful, really, to try to have empathy with the people on the other side of the story. I don't even need to make a direct reference to politics at this point. I think in 2018 and soon 2019 it's pretty apparent what the parallel is, but I think it would be fantastic if people were able to really put themselves in the perspective of the other side of the argument and ask themselves, what are they thinking? What motivates them? What are they afraid of? What do they like? And that is my wish for the coming week, that we all attempt to keep that in mind. Shabbat Shalom. And we have some beautiful egg whites. Look at that. They're forming peaks. Looks like it'll be a good mousse this week. Take care. Shabbat Shalom.